Howdy, Rockstars. I'm Lid Shaw, and welcome back to Recording Studio Rockstars, bringing you into the studio to learn from recording professionals so that you can make your best record ever and be a rock star of the studio yourself. My guest today is Matt Leigh, a two-time Grammy-winning producer, engineer, bassist, and educator right here in Nashville, Tennessee. Matt has worked with a diverse list of artists, including Willie Nelson, Natalie Grant, Lauren Daigle, Keb Mo, Marcus King, Ronnie Milsap, Planet Booty, Adelitas Way, I think if I'm,
Adelitas.
Adelitas Way, yeah. Adelitas Way. He spent 5 years as the studio manager and chief engineer at the Tracking Room, which is a beautiful big studio that's just right down the road from here, before transitioning to a freelance career in the music industry. In addition to his production and engineering work, Matt is also an instructor right here at SAE Institute Nashville, where he shares his extensive knowledge and experience with the next generation of audio professionals. Today's special video interview is brought to you by SAE Institute Nashville, right here on legendary Music Row in Music City, USA, as we join you from Studio A. I'm also excited to announce a new partnership with SAE as a sponsor for Recording Studio Rockstars. In this episode, we'll explore Matt's experiences at the Tracking Room, from recording in its expansive live space to managing its state-of-the-art renovations. We'll also discuss his teaching at SAE Institute Nashville, how he prepares students for the industry, and his approach to engineering and production across diverse genres. Plus, we'll dive into his work with legendary artists like Willie Nelson and Ronnie Milsap, uncovering techniques behind award-winning recordings. Thank you very much to Kevin White for making our introduction and setting this all up. Please welcome Matt Leigh to Recording Studio Rockstars. Matt, are you ready to rock, dude?
Let's rock.
Awesome. Glad to have you here. We're out of the gates and running now. So, very briefly, give us like a story arc from you being interested in music and stuff to finding yourself, at the Tracking Room, and then now at this wonderful institute at SAE teaching as well.
Sure. I'll try to do the condensed, shortened version because it's, several years of information to share. But
where are you from originally?
Originally from Kansas City, Missouri. Go Chiefs, go Royals.
Right on.
Yeah.
That's a big music city itself.
Huge music city. Yeah, lots of great musical heritage there. It's basically where jazz became a thing worldwide.
Yeah.
It wasn't invented there, but that's where it became popular. And as a musician growing up, it was a hotbed for opportunities to learn other styles of music that maybe aren't as prevalent in other parts of the country. So that was really exciting. But I was really fortunate to have people that saw a musical gift in me early on. And so I got pushed into piano lessons and learning how to do music. I really gravitated towards the bass guitar while I was, I think, in middle school. So it was just one of those things. I was playing in a jazz band for school. Our 7th grade jazz band had a program, and they needed a bass player. And so I said, hey, that sounds like fun.
Right,
I went and talked to the instructor and was like, hey, if I go learn how to do this, can I play bass for this band? And
easier to deal with than a tuba, right?
Yeah,
unless they didn't have you on bass tuba, right?
Yeah. Especially if you're not doing Dixieland jazz.
Yeah.
But
so you're like really studied in jazz and stuff like that. Can you read music and all that?
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Right on.
Yep. So I took a few lessons. I've been learning music since I was a kid. So just kind of comes naturally.
And then did you end up in school and in college for music studies, or had you discovered recording and gotten an interest in that yet?
Yeah, just through playing in bands in high school. We had a really great studio that's still operational back in Kansas City that they would give out free studio time to participate in their music festivals or Battle of the Bands or some of these other things, and just always loved being in the studio. While I was in college, I really got kind of obsessed with it. I didn't study music production in undergrad. That was something that came a little bit later, but a really kind of self-driven, again, it was a healthy obsession, I guess, might be a way to...
Right. That's one of the wonderful things about music, right? I mean, I was just talking to one of the students, I believe I was talking to Roberto actually here, and just the experience of like once you discover that you're interested in the music and the recording, and then you come to a school like this where you're able to actually spend all your time focusing on that. It's kind of mind-blowing, you know? Like, that's all I wanted to do once I hit school for this.
Yeah, it's really crazy. I mean, I eat, sleep, breathe music wherever I am. It's not like other jobs where, you know, you go to the job and then you leave and you don't have to think about, you know, if you're an accountant, I don't think accountants go home and think, well, how can I do accounting better tomorrow? Or how can I, you know, change this to make this experience better for somebody
else? Maybe
they
do. Hopefully my accountant does.
Yeah, your accountant probably.
Or the one that you may end up having to hire one day. I don't know.
Yeah, exactly.
Okay, cool. So where'd you go to school? Did you do the recording school route?
So I went to undergraduate at the University of San Diego. I studied mechanical engineering there.
I hear it's very sunny here is what I hear.
Sometimes, yeah. Yeah, a couple days out of the year.
You studied mechanical engineering, and then that kind of got you the interest in...
Yeah, I thought I was going to go into acoustic engineering and design studios and theaters and concert halls, but ended up really loving the creation side of music. And so, like I'd said, I really started focusing on learning as much as I could on my own, and got to a point where I knew that there was a gap between kind of working in project studios, home studios, and then working in, you know, a lot of the beautiful spaces we have here in Nashville. So I went to MTSU through their graduate program.
Nice. That's my alma mater.
Okay. Yeah. Go Blue Raiders.
They didn't have a graduate program when I was there, though.
Sure. Yeah, it was only a couple years old when I applied and got in, and I had a really great time and great experience. It was really cool being able to really focus on the studies and things that I was most interested in.
Yeah. Well, and that probably introduced you to the idea of the teaching and in recording as well, possibly, or as an option. But so you've finished at MTSU, and then tell us how'd you end up at a place like the Tracking Room? I mean, I know that there's that whole process of coming out of school and then thinking, okay, now what's next? You know, what do you remember about that step and some of the challenges and opportunities that came along?
Yeah, I think I kind of had a leg up on my classmates, because when I got to Nashville, I immediately started trying to find work and finding networking opportunities and people that I could help and be of service to. And really was really fortunate and met a guy named John Shermer, who was working for Keb Mo at the time, kind of his right-hand man. And John was really, really gracious and gave me opportunities as somebody that didn't know anything about audio at the time, not only in Keb's studio, but also out on the road. So I was lucky to go out on the road with a few small tours with Kevin and John. And then John kind of got out of working with Kevin over a couple years and randomly got a call from him one day. And he said, hey, the company I'm working for is about to take over this studio. I know you've never managed a studio before, but I think you'd be a really good fit. I'm going to put your name in the hat if you're interested.
What do you think it was about you that he saw as one of the traits that would make a good studio manager?
I'm just really cool. You know, we all know looking cool is the most important aspect of this job. So, no, I think detail oriented, showing up on time or early, you know, really just being obsessed with audio and music and that really mostly being nice and just being easy to get along with and a good hang. I think those are probably the things that he was considering. And you know, we'd had experience working together before on a number of gigs. And so I think that's what I tell a lot of my students is that's going to be how you get your first real big opportunity, is it's going to be somebody calls you up and says, hey, I think you'd be a good fit for this, or such and such told me you would be the right fit for this opportunity. And that's how it happened for me. I know a lot of my colleagues, that's what happened for them.
Do you remember also having to turn down some opportunities at that stage? Because I know that can be a challenge too. Sometimes you have to choose, like, should I do this or should I do that?
I had never turned anything down if people wanted me to work with them. Even if I wasn't maybe fully capable, I always had I'll figure it out. I always was of the mindset that if somebody was asking me or wanted me to be a part of an opportunity, that they saw something in me that maybe I didn't quite see in myself yet. And so that's a lot of times we don't necessarily know if we're ready for those opportunities. It takes somebody else to kind of tap you and say, you're ready, you can do this, you'd be really good at this.
Or you're ready to give it a shot anyway. Right?
Yeah, sure.
Yeah.
I remember my first my first when my boss called me, he's like, he said, you got the job. He's like, we're gonna give you the first shot. Don't screw it up, kind of thing.
Right. So you've done a lot of great things, and now here you are. But we want to know, when did you screw it up? Do you remember any stories of like making a mistake? Something that turned out to be a great learning lesson in the end.
I've had plenty of those. I think my favorite. Can I curse on this?
Oh yeah.
Okay,
we're in the studio.
Okay, so my favorite.
Although I don't know what the institute thinks.
I'll keep it PG-13.
You're my expert about that. So
I'll keep it PG-13. I make my students do PG-13 mixes when they if they're doing music that's explicit. So, but my first oh shit moment was we had Taylor Swift in the studio. She was doing their 1989 rehearsals with us.
Wow.
And that was cool. But that was the first, that was the first gig that we had when I took the job. So they're like, hey.
And you're at the tracking room.
At the tracking room.
Wow.
They're like, hey, you got the job. Oh, and by the way, the biggest pop star in the world is going to be here for 6 weeks.
No pressure.
Next week, so good luck. Again, don't screw it up. But her crew, and they're amazing. I love her. Not just the fact that she's now a Kansas City fan, but, I've always been a huge fan of hers. But anyway, so they came in. Her crew was in there for a couple weeks, getting everything ready. They're rehearsing. They're getting things ready for that tour. And, all week we're like, Taylor's coming in on Saturday, so we need to be ready on Saturday. We show up to the studio, and there's no power. Like nothing will turn on. Everything is completely off.
I thought that only happens in my studio.
Two places now. Yeah, there's two places.
Studio.
Yeah, exactly.
Right,
so we're freaking out because everything else on the block has power. And again, it's Saturday, so it's like nothing. The power company doesn't usually work on Saturdays.
Right. It's hard to get through.
Yeah. So we're scrambling around and calling my boss. Hey, did we pay the power bill this month? Did something happen? And
right. And you're managing the studio, so it's kind of like your responsibility.
Yeah, it's on me. Yeah.
Wow,
and again,
this is pressure.
When we took the studio over, it was in a really bad state. And so we were also trying to grow our business and reputation. And so that also doesn't look great for, hey, we don't have our stuff together here.
Yeah.
But anyways, long story short, we called the power company. They sent over a couple guys. Taylor's supposed to be there, I think, at 1 o'clock. They get there around 12:30. And we're sitting there watching them, and this thing comes flying. The guy gets up there, throws this thing out of the transformer right outside of the studio. A squirrel had jumped in between the lines and caused our whole thing to go down.
It's always the squirrels. Those rascally squirrels.
Always the squirrels. They got it back up and running at like 12:45. So all of the crews scrambling around, within 10 minutes, they're up and running. Here comes Taylor, no wiser
Amazing.
To the situation. And
wow.
Everything went on as planned. But
and these sessions were rehearsal sessions with the band or something before?
Correct. Yeah.
So part of the reason why that might have happened too, the tracking room is maybe you can tell us a little bit about it. I mean, it's a massive and impressive studio. I've visited there only once actually, but I remember going and many years ago, and it was just like, I was kind of awestruck by it. But, tell me if these are accurate, but like it measures 70 feet in length or something like that.
75,
25 to 40 feet in width, ceilings ranging from 20 to 25 feet. So we're talking like pretty big. I don't know if that's gymnasium size, but it's a big room.
Like two gymnasiums. Yeah.
So you can fit everybody together. How did like an expansive space like that influence your approach to recording large ensembles or various solo versus solo artists? So like when you're in a big space like that, what maybe describe the studio a little bit, but also talk about like how you approached using a space like that.
Sure. Yeah. So they built the tracking room to kind of be the flagship of a number of smaller studios for a company called Masterphonics.
Yeah.
Back in 95 was when the tracking room opened. And then they were hoping that building a massive sound stage or scoring stage would bring business from LA. So that was kind of their main intent with building a huge space like that. Now, weirdly enough, with those expansive spaces, the room was super controlled. So anywhere you went in the room, it sounded great. It didn't matter whether you were on the left end, the right end. I mean, everything sounded very, very controlled, like the instrument. What you heard out of the instrument was what you got in the control room.
Yeah.
And so that actually makes your job as an engineer a lot easier when you're not battling the room or battling the space.
Okay. So, one of the things that I think about is like when we're outside, and we start listening to sounds, we realize that like there's no walls. And so sounds are you just hear what's there, but it may or may not be supported. Do you feel like there's a similarity in a big space that's well designed like that? Or do you feel like you can hear the space in there?
Yeah, I think with controlled acoustics, I mean, you can hear everything. They had that so quiet that if you were there by yourself, especially late at night, when the hallucinating, the witching hour,
right, you
could convince yourself like you were hearing your bodily functions going because it was so controlled, like you hear your heartbeat kind of thing.
Wow.
I mean, it was.
Hopefully that's all you hear, right?
Yeah, exactly. The voices in my head. Now that's a different story, but
right.
No, the room itself was. I mean, it was designed by famed studio acoustician Tom Hidley.
Oh yeah.
And, he did a ton of rooms in his 50-year career. This one was kind of his flagship. This was, I think, the second to last big room that he did, and it had all the bells and whistles and things that he was known for in his designs. And it was, I would say, of all the studios that I've worked in Nashville, that one, from an acoustic standpoint, was the top.
Yeah, that's amazing.
Yeah.
And so when you're in a room that's a space that's like that, where it's almost like you can't mess up where you're positioning instruments, it makes it a little easier. But there's also like multiple rooms, right? There's the stone room. I know I had a question about that too, but I can just remember it.
Yeah.
There's the famous stone room, right? So
yeah.
What would you use a room like that for? And then how many different ISO booths?
Yeah,
or rooms would you
so for the listeners at home, that was a space that was completely, every surface was reflective.
Right.
There was tiles on the floor, plaster ceiling, and then Tennessee River rock lined all the walls. It was, beautiful space, very, very cool. Almost kind of looked like you were in a dungeon or something.
Yeah.
But they originally built that with the intention of that would be the drum room. Back in the late 80s, early 90s, when they would have been thinking about that space, drums sounded larger than life. They had that massive kind of carryover from the late 80s of the kind of gated reverb sound and just huge reverb, just huge drums. And so you could actually get that type of sound by putting the drums in there. There's a couple really famous records that you can hear that and hear just how controlled and even still being that reflective, it actually still sounded great. But
yeah.
The two records that come to mind is Shania Twain's Come On Over, which I think is still the highest selling country record of all time.
Wow.
And then Megadeth's Cryptic Writings. The
Cool.
the first song on that album, it's called Trust, and it starts out with a huge drum fill in that stone room. And so that was a great way to hear it. And then we'd have people come and visit, and we'd play that song for them. And then we'd play Shania Twain right back behind it. Like, these two were done in the exact same space.
All right, awesome. We're listening to that after this interview.
Yeah, of course.
We're checking that out for sure. Now, also the control room, my note says it's a Kinoshita Hidley main monitors designed for accurate low-frequency reproduction down to 20 hertz. And I remember going to visit Jim Rondinelli when he was mixing, I think it was Jars of Clay there. And so he showed me the space, and I got to, see it. And he said, this control room goes down to 20 hertz, which, I guess why is 20 hertz relevant for us?
Yeah.
I'm asking the dumb basic questions.
No,
too.
but I think actually that room theoretically went down to 10.
Oh, did it really?
Yeah.
Okay, cool.
When they first built it, it used I can't remember what they call it. He had a special name for it, infrasonic something.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And there was like a bass port behind the console or something that went way down into the bass.
Yeah, what do we call it? An infinite baffle was, I think, the name that he developed and the system that he developed. And basically, you're basically in a suspended cage kind of idea,
right?
With the floors being elevated on springs and things like that, and air going underneath you, but. Yeah, so the reason 20 hertz going down that low is important is because that's, the theoretical range that we can hear.
Right.
Now it's probably slightly higher than that. We kind of feel those frequencies, but that's where all the thump comes from in your kick drum and your low tuned bass guitars.
Yeah, well, and I know there's a lot of interest in hip hop and stuff like that, and here too with some of the students I was talking about. So like that sub frequencies. I guess you can go even lower than that for even subbier sub stuff, but I don't know. Anyway, that's where it gets fun, and it's cool if you can hear in a space stuff like that, because then you can really make decisions about it, right? You can tell what you're deciding. What have you learned about translating that kind of being able to hear stuff to, a little more real world, like maybe we're in headphones, maybe we're in a variety of studios, stuff like that. Have you got any tips for the rock stars about, and the students here, just about, which is one and the same, about the, getting that sense of what's going on with your low end in a mix?
Yeah. It makes it a lot easier to get things to translate to other systems when the space you're mixing in has been acoustically treated. And what we would do is we didn't have to check our mixes on anything else.
Right.
We mixed it there. We mixed it on the big speakers, which is rare for most places.
Right.
But we mixed on the Kinoshitas, and we would take our mix elsewhere, and it would just sound good.
That's cool.
We'd check it. If we listen on headphones, the bass would be perfect. It would be nice and tight, but also have that oomph that you want out of a good low end.
Yeah.
Put in the car, it translates really well. I think that's kind of the difference between, like, when I'm working at home, I have to kind of battle the inconsistencies of my room and do the headphone check and do the car check and those kinds of things. But in a place like the tracking room, their control room, it was perfect, assuming that, your limiting factor was now yourself or the engineer, whereas in other times you're kind of battling the room.
And so you mentioned the car check. So the car check, I wonder if that's everybody's check these days. I don't know, how many people here check their mixes in the car versus, or is it headphones? So yeah, I see some hands going up about the car. Everybody? Not everybody, about half and half. And then
mine's on my iPhone. I after I mix something and send it to the client, I'll do this after I've sent it to the client. Then I'll get my phone out and listen and stream
just the speakers listen, right? I do that a lot.
Uh-huh.
And then, some people want to make fun of me for it, but I'm like, if it doesn't sound good on the iPhone speaker, it's not done yet.
Yeah, exactly.
Right?
Yeah. Yeah, and honestly, that's these days is probably more important than it's like the phone check and the earbud check. I think are kind of the two, because most people aren't wearing, over-ear headphones when they're out and about, and most of the time people, when they're consuming content, it's on their phone without any headphones.
I think I did an experiment too where I was doing the earbud check. I figured out how to just route my audio so that it was showing up in my earbuds, which I think is tricky sometimes with sample rates or something with the computer and Pro Tools. But somehow I got it to work in that instance. And so I was dialing in the drums, and then I took those to the car to go listen. And they sounded kind of awesome. So I think there's something to be discovered too about mixing well in headphones like that, and just trying things. Cool thing about different monitors and different listening spaces, right, is you discover different ways to experiment with the sound, and you sort of discover new things, right?
Yeah, for sure. Or, man, I really screwed that part of my mix up.
Right.
I need to go back and change it right now and resend it out.
Yeah. Sometimes it feels like that's the easy part for us, to beat ourselves up about what we're doing, right?
Yeah.
Do you think records are ever finished?
No, you just run out of time.
Right.
Everybody's George Lucas. We're constantly seeing all the things that are wrong with it after the fact, and I tend to try to rely on people's opinions I trust, and if the artist tells me they like it and they enjoy it, then I try to take that as it being done or as it being correct.
Yeah.
Now, I think in this industry, we're all our own worst critics, so I think that can be a challenge to, sometimes overcome your own ways that you look at, your own work, I guess.
Yeah. Now, what inspired you to start teaching here at SAE Institute, and how do you feel like that kind of experience has shaped your perspective on audio engineering in general? Like, did you find yourself coming to teach and discovering that you were learning as a student here as well?
Yeah. So I think getting into teaching was just something that I enjoy. Like, I like sharing my experiences and my knowledge and trying to help the next generation of engineers and producers. And just, it's a lot of fun. It's really rewarding to start with folks that maybe don't know anything about audio or maybe just a little bit, and then to see their progression and then watch them go get jobs and, kind of almost like a stepson kind of thing or stepdaughter kind of thing in a weird audio related way. But
yeah, no, it's cool. And it's such a cool space. And I mean, I don't know if you can see it on the cameras, maybe you can just do a pan, but we got a room full of students here and people who are listening in and joining in. So it's a great feeling here. It's a great sense of participation, which is really exciting to see,
For sure.
So what do you feel like are some of the most common challenges that students face here? What are some of the most common questions that you get?
Yeah. I think the biggest pitfalls is most students don't experiment enough. They're so afraid of doing it wrong or failing that they don't kind of get out of the comfort zone of, one teacher told me to do it this way,
right,
and so that's how I always do it, versus now's the time to screw it up, because as you know, once you get out and you're on a paid gig, the amount of time to experiment and have fun, well, you're still having fun, but the amount of time to experiment and try things is much less.
Diminishes, right?
Diminishes.
Yeah. Or there's less wiggle room for the experimentation. You
for
sort of
sure.
have to find your own moments for it.
So I constantly tell people, run things through all the gear, turn everything on, make it sound bad. That's how you learn kind of the limits of what's happening. And the other big thing for me, like I said earlier, don't wait for somebody to tell you to go out and get work or to go out and find opportunities in Nashville.
Right.
We're so lucky to be in a place that's so focused on music and music production and live sound. There's a plethora of opportunities for everybody of all levels.
Yeah.
And so I think getting out there, meeting artists, going to shows, getting involved in the community of professional organizations and other groups and things like that this is the perfect place to do so.
Yeah. Well, I thanked Kevin at the beginning of this. Kevin is director of, if I say it right, career services. Yeah, career services. So it's really cool to be able to come to a school when you find that you discover that you're fascinated with music and audio and want to learn the recording. I think one thing for us to remember too is, and I think it was Ira Glass had a famous quote talking about, we begin as an expert in taste. We show up, we don't know how to do something yet, but we have strong opinions about what's good or bad or what we like or don't like. And we show up with that kind of knowledge. But then it's over the time and a body of work that we learn how to bring our level of being able to create hopefully up to our own level of taste in music.
Yeah. And then the other big thing is, this, you probably feel similarly, but this is a lifelong pursuit.
Right.
So, I get students for 8 weeks at a time, and I tell them the first day, the bad news is that you're not going to learn everything you want to know in this 8-week period. We'll get you the basics and we'll get you up and running. And we'll learn some really fun and cool things.
Which is awesome,
Oh, for sure. But at the same time, I'm into this now going on 20 years, and I still feel like there's things that I'm learning on a daily or weekly basis. And so I think that's another thing that's hard to instill is going to school is just the beginning. That's where you get the tools to then become even more successful.
Yeah, indeed. I remember being in school and learning kind of how things work. I remember being introduced to these are what microphones. These are different kinds of microphones. These are different kinds of pickup patterns. These are some fundamental, mathematics of sound or whatever. So just understanding that stuff. And this is what a compressor does. This is what time code is, which I don't even know if we have to worry about time code that much.
Yeah, what's time
anymore.
code?
Exactly. But back then, we had to learn the digital words for it and stuff like that. But then it wasn't until I was actually in a studio. I was at a place called Alex the Great here in Berry Hill.
Oh yeah. Mm-hmm.
And working with Brad and Robin over there, and they were doing the kind of music that I was like, oh, I like this music and I like these people. So getting out of school, trying some different things, and then at some point you run into somebody and an opportunity where you're like, this matches what I like doing. And then all of a sudden it kind of opens up. But it was being in that studio that I actually learned well, what do you actually do with the compressor? You can make things sound cool. You can make the drums completely explode out of the speakers. You can make vocals do really cool things, all that kind of stuff. So that's to your point, it's hard to learn all that in the initial part, but really take advantage of the the early moment of learning the tech stuff, like how does this stuff work, so that when you get out there, I felt like there were things I felt like I knew a little more about even than my mentors once I got out there, but they knew how to make music, how to make a song, how to make a record,
Sure. And we're really lucky here to have top-notch gear and top-notch facilities, which, I've taught at other places that don't have the same level of gear and stuff. So also highly encourage students to get in here as much as possible and get your hands on the gear, because that's how you learn it, is by doing it.
So now let me see if I remember this correctly, but our voices should hopefully sound pretty good on these microphones, because they're going through the same mic preamps and mixing console that Whitney Houston used to own. Was that right?
That's the rumor. Yeah.
Is that fair to say? Okay, that's accurate. Yeah. So Studio A here has a SSL. I don't remember what the
9000J.
9000J. Yeah. Mm-hmm. Beautiful console. Used to belong to Whitney Houston, being in her studio, I guess. Pretty cool stuff. And then let's see. Do you want to describe a little bit more of the studio environments and like the school here, and what are the different spaces where what can you come and be learning in, or what can you learn here?
Yeah, to be honest, I mostly only spend my time here in Studio A.
Okay.
I have most experience in this space, but great SSL 9000J console. I think it's all working now. It's been in different states of repair.
Better be working on our mics right
now. As all consoles are over, working and things. Daily usage wears and tears on a 30-year-old piece of gear.
Well, and the big analog consoles too, it's very complex.
Oh yeah,
there's a lot of audio, there's a lot of electronics, a lot of routing that's going on.
Sure. But I think there's 64 channels in there that are operational, which is great. That's probably more than we actually need most of the time. But that is the centerpiece of this studio, and we're operating on Pro Tools, and there's a ton of great outboard gear in there, a lot of good options. So what I always tell the students is that the stuff we have here is what you're going to find in the top commercial studios in town.
Yeah.
And so that's also, I feel like that gives the students here kind of a leg up and an advantage, that they're familiar with the stuff after they graduate and after they leave.
Yeah, big time. I think it's really cool, because then, you get out there and you start learning some other console or whatever, and you're going to understand certain fundamentals about, that's kind of how the signal flow works and stuff like that. And also you may find some consoles seem a whole lot simpler to learn than the SSL you learned in school. And then some will be just totally digital versions of things, and you'll have to figure out how that stuff works too. So it's great to have all that experience here. Yeah.
You doing okay with that one? How are we doing on time?
I think I was just getting close to wrapping up here too. So let me see. Here's where I'm at next. Are we good? Okay, cool. Okay, cool. So what do you feel like are some of the things that, the students here at SAE Institute can do to prepare for real world studio work? What aspects of the program do you feel are most beneficial for aspiring engineers or music producers?
Yeah, great question. I think as far as school goes, being as involved as possible, going to class and doing the work, that's the best way to prepare for some real world opportunities and things. As far as, other than that, I think finding a love for this, if you can. Some people may come here without being obsessed with it, and that's okay. But I think you got to find that spark that says, I'm going to keep doing this no matter what. And, I think having that attitude of I might have to go do other things. When I first got to town, and even after I graduated from grad school, I was a valet attendant and a cashier at Chipotle.
Right.
And so, there was a lot of times where I was doing jobs that I really, really hated, but I knew it's I need to keep going, because I know I'm here I'm here to make records. I'm here to produce records for people. And, thinking about that now, that was 15 years ago, thinking about those times when it kind of sucked. I'm standing here, I've got a graduate degree, and I'm asking people if they want chips with their order,
right.
It's this isn't cool, but I've got to pay my rent. I've got to have a little extra money to have some fun on the weekends. And So I think that's the other part, is like trying to instill a mindset of like, I'm never going to give up. I'm always going to do this. Like I'm trying to find my passion for this.
Yeah. And now here at SAE, it's there are degree programs as well too. So it's cool that students can come here, learn these fundamentals, also acquire a degree if they want to. And I believe I'm saying that accurately. And then go out there in the real world. And just that reminder of like going out and being willing to do the balance, like keep the bills paid, keep your eye on the prize, keep focused on what you want to be doing with the music. And if you just keep trying, that opportunity it's gonna make an appearance. It's gonna show up, and it might not be where you expected it to. And I feel like that tip from you, like finding the kind of jobs that also give you that flexibility. I think what you said earlier about always saying yes to stuff, same thing for me. It was that like, be ready to say yes when an opportunity comes. And when somebody asks you if you can do a session, it's just like, be ready to just say, yep, I'll be there, and just have that kind of flexibility.
Yeah, even if you have to quit your current job to go do the thing that you want to do, it's like you'll find another job. There's plenty of them here in Nashville.
Yeah.
We are very fortunate, though, that a lot of the places that provide those types of opportunities get it. They know half of our staff are struggling songwriters and musicians. The other half are struggling producers and engineers. So it's very cool that they are, in my experience, usually understanding of like, hey, I got a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity tomorrow. I'm not going to be there, and they're
right.
Most of the time pretty cool.
Yeah, right. Well, cool. Well, thank you so much for doing the interview with me. It's great to be here. What an honor to be in Studio A, right here on Music Row at SAE Institute. So cool. Matt, where can listeners go find out more about you, or just follow you? And same thing with SAE Institute.
Yeah. I need to update my website. Don't go to my website, but you can find me on Instagram. It's Matt Leigh Pro. So that's probably the best spot to connect with me at the moment.
Leigh.
Yeah, it's just the word
cool.
Slay without the S.
Right, there you go.
Yeah.
Awesome.
Yeah, at Matt Leigh Pro on Instagram.
Awesome. And then SAE Institute. SAE.edu. Just SAE.edu. Oh, there you go. All right, great. So, Rockstars, if you'd like to check out SAE and learn more about the programs here and everything, just go to the website and check it out. We'll have a link in the description of the video here as well. And then also, if you have any questions or comments, particularly if you have questions about the school or questions for Matt or questions for me, just drop a comment in, and I'll be sure to reply and make sure that it gets forwarded where it needs to go. So thank you very much.
Thanks, Lidge.
All right, cheers. Awesome.
Before you